And you're live, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tara, members, good evening. Welcome to the Strategy and Resources Committee meeting, Thursday the 26th of September. Where's the year gone? My name is Councillor Mark Durham and I'm Chairman of this committee. Members, we are streaming the meeting live as well as recording, and by being present at the meeting, you're giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak, and I'll then invite you at the appropriate time. Members, please avoid approaching the top table as this could create interference with the cameras and live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of microphones. Therefore, please, when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today, but if you hear the alarm, please exit using either of the two marked fire escape routes. Once out of the building, please proceed to the designated muster point located on the grass verge by the police station entrance. Thank you very much. Item 2, apologies for absence. May I have apologies, Tara?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Stamp, and Councillor Stilts is attending as a substitute for Councillor Stamp. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on 25th of July, found on pages 5 to 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Is there a seconder for that? That's that's seconded by Councillor Thompson and agreed by Councillor Fluker. Item 4, declaration of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. And you are reminded that you're required to disclose such an interest as soon as you become aware, should the need arise during the meeting. Next item is public participation. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Leader.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to declare the interest now, but I do have a sort of a non-pecuniary interest on item 13, but I'll give the detail obviously because that's in private and confidential.
Councillor Fluker.
Question. The 6B, I represent the council on the Harbour Commissioners.
That's right. Any further declarations, Councillor Driver?
It relates to 6A. I'm the trustee of a charity that gives money to the particular charity in question in 6A.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. Just that I've been in conversations and used to be an owner of a Thames sailing barge, so I've been in conversations with current owners and operators, but no financial gain is achieved by that. Thank you.
I'm wondering if that's another registrable interest. I'm looking for no.
Only if I gain, the Constitution won't allow. They have to have some gain that I get something from it. I get nothing from that.
That makes
Okay, fine. Okay, if that's that, participation by the public, we haven't received any. Is that correct, Tara?
That's right. We haven't got any. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Item 6, motion referred to this committee by the council. So 6A is a motion from Councillor Swindle, which is found on pages 11 to 14. And I understand Councillor Spenceley is going to introduce this motion.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether anybody wants me to read the whole motion through, but I'm guessing that you've all read it. Good, fantastic. So I seconded this motion from Councillor Swindle, and so I've agreed to speak tonight. As many of you will know, Councillor Swindle works full-time plus more really in the care sector. So she's our representative at Action for Family Carers, and obviously she's got a great deal of professional experience, but the thing that really I think made me second this motion was her personal experience and what the insight that she was able to give me into the important work of Action for Family Carers, and how the bill that landed with them quite suddenly after they'd set their budget this year has left them in a very, very difficult and compromised financial situation. Very briefly, I will tell you her story, which I have permission to do, and it won't take long. So Councillor Swindle's mother, I'm going to call her Nikki from now on, was a councillor here in this chamber for 14 years. After she finished her last term of office, she was diagnosed quite soon after with cancer and sadly died quite soon after that, leaving her husband a widower. Some years after that, her father suffered a terrible stroke. And there were only two things locally that really allowed Councillor Swindle, or Nikki, to carry on and with her work and to look after her father as his carer. And those two things were the stroke unit at St Peter's Hospital, and I think all members here know how threatened that is and that it's not currently here. And the other thing was Action for Family Carers. And in this way, I would suggest that actually this charity provides a kind of infrastructure here in a place where we have very little infrastructure. And I think it's really important to understand that they work obviously with all age groups, not just with people who care for older people, but also people who care for younger carers, so people who care for family members who are younger. And without those services here, I think a big hole would be left behind. And quite frankly, what's happened here, I mean, I can't get involved in the debate as such because you've all got the report before you and I'm not a member of this committee. But I think the situation that we face now, or that the charity faces now, really does stem from the fact that the bill came so late without any real prior warning to them. And, well, thank you for considering this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Spenceley. We have discussed this, and quite clearly from the recommendations, we are recommending that there's a transitional arrangement. And I think we'd already established the requirement that all of our tenants cover the cost of utilities, which has other benefits, because what it will enable them to do is to go out to market and get the best deals, which at the moment, because we're sourcing it for them, they may not be getting, and they can budget, not only their tariffs but also be mindful of their uses. So I think in principle there's nothing wrong with it, and it is Action for Family Carers is desperately important. I know firsthand. My brother-in-law looks after his wife who has MND. It is absolutely essential. So I would hope that the 1 year transition will help those and the other tenants that are involved to give them time to budget and negotiate a better tariff. It is going to require, I understand, some new meters fitted, which we will have to bear the cost of, but I think that's all perfectly reasonable. Now, I had Councillor Lagan and then Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo everything Councillor Swindle said and everything Councillor Paula Spenceley has said. The bit for me, I'm glad you raised about the meters, because that's absolutely critical, because the disproportionate outcome of working out the cost per square metre is unfair, because people have used their offices for different periods of time. So a bigger office might be used for a less period of time. So as long as we have some assurance that we will put individual meters in, or we put circuit breaker meters, which I didn't know such a thing existed until recently, and they're a very cost-effective way of using an existing board, putting it in, and each individual has an individual meter. So that will be, as long as they're metered and everybody gets pays for the electricity they use, not averaged out, I think that will be the pertinent thing, and would allow them to do exactly what you've said, to source a deal where they can get the best deal for themselves. So I'm in favour of them paying utility bills, but only as long as we make sure they pay the amount they use.
Yeah, I think that's integral to it, certainly from my point of view. And, we all know what it's like when you're not paying your own bill. You're not bothered about turning the lights on and off. And, perhaps if you're negotiating your own tariff and you're responsible for monitoring the use of electricity, perhaps you're a bit more careful, and it enables you to budget a bit more easily. Councillor Fluker's next, and Councillor Spenceley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm just curious, bearing in mind, the way we talk about tapering policy in, I mean, it started with the female, changing the female pension age, and it was just like an absolute, cliff face. We've got it now with winter fuel payments. You know, if we were going to do this, I think it would probably have been much better if we put a taper in. But the thing that really concerns me is can officer confirm why no consultation with tenants took place? I mean, this seems to be the critical part of this. If our strategy says that we're supposed to consult with our tenants before changing things like this, then I'd very much like to know why that we didn't. And Chairman, as far as the recommendations are concerned, I would propose that we agree the recommendation to allow these people to sort themselves out in a reasonable amount of time.
Perhaps we can get an answer from Mrs. Green, is that?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to confirm that the principle of charging for utilities was actually approved in the previous year as part of our savings discussions. So that principle was established, and there was communication with the organisations affected to make them aware that this was coming, but we totally accept that the final formal notification didn't actually go out to them until after the formal strategy was approved. So that did give them a limited time to be able to respond to that. And I think that's why officers are recommending that we do have this transition period, so that it enables the organisations to actually budget for this going forward. And I think that is it's a very valuable point, and something we will bear in mind going forward, that when we are introducing a policy that will cause those type of pressures, that we do ensure that there is a transition period for that adjustment to be made.
Councillor Nick Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. These tenants are experts in their own field. They're not experts in energy tariffs or energy conservation. So might it not be helpful if an officer with some sort of liaison remit, like our climate action officer or Mr. Turner, the joint NHS MDC appointee, spends just a few hours with them, helping them perhaps to optimise their energy rather than just leaving them on their own to do it? Just a thought.
I'm sure that can be done.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have already arranged to meet with Action for Family Carers next week to talk through with them the outcome of members' decision tonight and how we can assist them going forward, and that will certainly be one of the offers that we will make.
Excellent. Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have emailed a question that the Section 151 answered part of it, but there is a part that she didn't answer, and my question was, this bill that we've given them, which we've got this monetary value for, is that for the year? Is it outstanding? Is it what they may have to pay, or is it what we think they have to pay? So, you know, you've told them that this utilities bill is X amount, but you haven't really explained if that's estimated for the year. Is that what they now owe? And that was sort of confusing me.
Thank you, Chairman. The indication of cost was based upon the last financial year's full bill. So what would normally happen was we would bill the Action Family Carers for that in that next year. So we wouldn't pass the previous year's bill on. What we'd look to do is that would set the charges for the or an estimate of costs for the forthcoming year. However, if members were to approve and agree these proposals, essentially that won't happen until the next financial year. So if we arrange for new meters to be installed, essentially they will start from a point of zero from next April, and then they will pay the actual cost from April going forward.
Councillor Lagan.
Just a quick one, Chair. Thank you. I'd suggest with you go and consult and meet all of the tenants on Brickhouse Farm, because this affects all of the tenants, so they should all be spoken to. I've had an email from Sharon Kennedy showing great concern, which Steve and I have had a light conversation about. So I think that what we're talking about here applies across Brickhouse Farm to all of the tenants that are in there, so that everybody's set up, knows what they're up against, knows what they can budget for, and it's clear and transparent. I'd suggest we go to we're not talking hundreds,
Well,
are we?
this motion will cover all tenants. So.
Yeah, as long as we go and see them, that's the key thing, because we haven't. We put a size 10 boot on it.
Yeah, Councillor Fitton.
Thank you, Chair. I just have really one question, and I think it's a fair compromise that's been presented for all. But what I'd understand is if the situation is that the extra carers have a problem in actually raising the funding for next year, is there like a process the same as with Peppercorn Lease that they can actually go through with the council to say, look, we're going to struggle to meet these needs, we're adding this value, we would like a compromise situation, or is it just a black and white now policy with no appeal to it in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, Councillor Fittock, with the strategy, we're looking to have a consistent approach with all of our tenants. So whilst we want to, we feel within the strategy it was appropriate to charge utilities to any tenants, where there is an opportunity to come back and go to members is where organisations delivering objectives that are aligned with our strategic objectives, and therefore members can then make a decision to reduce their rental or lease fee accordingly. But the utilities and the cost to run that organisation would be associated with that company and not a cost that would be incurred by the council.
Right, I think, members, we got broad agreement that this is a good compromise given the situation. So we have the two recommendations on pages 11 and 12. I say move. Is there a seconder for that? Yes.
Chairman, sorry, just to advise, it will need to be a recommendation to council.
Yep, that's fine. Recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Seconded, proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Driver. Please show those in favour. Thank you very much indeed. Item 6B is a motion from Councillor Lagan, found in your supplementary pack, page 3 to 6. And Councillor Lagan, I understand, is going to present this motion.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you to members for the conversations around this motion. The motion itself, as it stands, which is seconded by Councillor Stilt, is that the Council makes budget provision in the 2024-2025 budget setting process and undertakes dredging works, mud cutting, bucket dredging from the area from the Visitors Berth in Maldon Quay along to the end of the area used by the Barge Trust. This is so as to secure safe access to the quay by Maldon's historic barge fleet, supporting visiting barges and other types of vessels to the town, and secure safe moorings to the barge fleet at Maldon. That the Council further provides a sufficient sum each year that is ring-fenced for mud removal every 5 years to ensure that the access to the quay is safely maintained at all times and funding is provided. Work to be carried out in liaison with all key users and stakeholders. So that's the motion that I've put, and I understand within the Constitution I have up to 5 minutes to talk to it. I think one of the key areas, members know why this is so important. You know, the option of not doing anything is not there. We just simply cannot do nothing. I understand the financial situations. I sit on this committee as chair of the council. I understand that deeply, but we can afford to do this. We have sufficient funds to be able to do this. If you look at Topsail Charters in their own right, I'm talking about reserves, but Topsail Charters in their own right, they've brought in over £111,000 in car parking income for the businesses they run. And the situation that they are in at the moment with the build-up of mud is the barges are being damaged. They genuinely are, and we've got the River Bailiff here, one of the best on the southeast coast, probably one of the best in the UK, who can subscribe to that. So we have to move the mud. We have to get rid of the mud. They're cancelling trips, especially on neap tides, because they just can't get out. So we need to get the mud out, and we need to get the mud away. We've also got an opportunity to raise income so we can actually use the Visitors Berth from the 1 or 2 vessels that plop up there every now and again. So we have a chance to be able to use that. And I found a project overview sheet, okay, from the Hythe Quay, and this is 2012. The cost at 2012 was about £15,000 in black and white. So this is off the council website, so it's not a covert piece of information. Spoke to one of the spoke to Paul Jeffries the other day about how quickly the mud builds up, and he said, I washed the blocks, and a year later I had 6 inches of mud. That's a lot of mud coming down that river. So if we do nothing, we will risk losing the fleet, and this is reality. It's not me being over dramatic. I love the things. They're sitting on the emblem behind you. It's a very nice little book, I thought. I wonder what's on the cover. It's a beautiful photograph and epitomises our district. So members, I think if you're worried about the financial side of it, I would go along with what the officer's recommendations would be when they get appointed, and I would actually say, look, let's do this. Let's actually commit to supporting these people. Let's commit to support the Port of Maldon going forward for the future, because this is what it's all about. And all we have to do simply in the officer's recommendation is remove the word principle, because we're then saying we're going to do something, but we're going to go back and we're going to look at this. We're going to look at what options they are, what the costs are involved, and what can we do and what can't we do. So that's really where I want to stop now. Obviously, I've got a right to reply at the end of the meeting as the motioner. So members, I'll endorse you to support officer recommendations with an amendment to take out the word principle, so that we can actually support the most important asset on our riverfront, and that's the barge fleet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan. Mrs Green, I know we've done some investigation into the potential cost of this. Do you have any information for the committee, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have
A microphone, please.
Apologies. Thank you, Chairman. We have undertaken some early work to understand the costs, and the information that has been provided to us is in the report. So the cost of the initial project could be significant and could be in the region of about £100,000, which includes the cost of carrying out the work, the licences and the project resources. The actual indication of cost that we've been given just for the dredging or the mud removal is about £80,000. Plus there would be the cost of the licences and plus the project resource. That's the initial cost, and then there's obviously a ongoing cost in terms of how we deal with it from that point forward. So it's just to give members a bit of an understanding that the costs are very significant. We're not, as officers, saying that we don't agree. What we do say is that we do agree with the principle, but there needs to be, in our view, some further work done to understand, first of all, what is involved. There's procurement, because of the potential cost. There will be procurement issues, and we will have to go out and do a full tender process. We need to determine the scope of the project, look at what are the options for dealing with the issue. For example, how frequently would it need to be done? Understand the environmental impacts and any work we would need to do around managing those risks. Look at the timescales for delivery, look at the licence requirements, any future mitigations, engagement with stakeholders, a specification for work to undertake the procurement. So there's quite a few things that would need to be looked at in terms of delivering this as a project. But our main area to focus on is that before members make the final decision, is to have a working group that would consider all of these issues and then would be able to report back to the committee, and then in terms of making a final decision.
Thank you, Mrs Green. We're a coastal authority, and the river and the estuary is absolutely important. It's vital to us, and the barges just happen to be our trademark, if you like, and nobody is ever going to say that they're not absolutely vital to Maldon, and nobody is going to say that this isn't really important. My concern, having chaired the finance working group, is that we're looking at a budget gap of £800,000 next year. So I think it's slightly rash to say we have got the money, because we haven't got the money, and I'm afraid that is the cold hard fact, and I'm sure Ms Lucas will bear me out on that. Basically, if we allocate that amount to this, then something else will have to give. And I think at the moment there is a lot of unknown information, like, who is actually responsible, who's going to benefit, what licenses, etc. do we need. So I think the working group is a good way forward. Now I've got a long list, and Councillor Fluke has been itching to go, and he was first.
Yeah, look, Chairman, Councillor Lagan's absolutely right, and it is quite curious that both Burnham Yacht Harbour and Bradbourne Marina both silt up between about 100 and 150 millimetres a year. The danger with this is when you get to a critical mass and it suddenly drops, you wouldn't probably notice it, but that means it's cost you twice as much to get the mud out. And this is when, you really are digging something that's really hard. In some ways, this is a motion that talks to releasing some money from the 24-25 budget. But I mean, bearing in mind this working committee, or whatever it's called, is due to report back at the 23rd of January. Well, by the time we get to the 23rd of January and then it goes through the committee process, we'll be into the new year. And I think what's been said is absolutely right. If we're going to do this, we need to reset what's going on there, and we need to do it once and for all properly. And then keeping on top of it is not going to be tens of thousands of pounds, it's going to be less. Well, that's probably not right. It's probably going to cost about 20 grand every couple of years, rather than probably 25, 35 and 40 over the next 3 if we go about it the way that's being proposed here. And yes, I understand totally that we've got significant budget gaps, but there comes a time when we have to look at the value outside of that. And that's why I think if this involves the visitors pontoon, then there's opportunities there to increase tourism. The Harbour Commissioners want to extend the visitors pontoon, which again would create more options, but it can't be at the moment because of the mud. Ms Green spoke to licences, and if we have to apply for an MMO licence, be assured that's probably going to take a minimum of 2 years. My understanding is if we can satisfy them that this forms part of the navigable river, which in theory it doesn't because it's a place where people moor, then we don't need that licence. There are very, very few people on the East Coast that could take on this type of work. It is a big project because it would mean that the barges would have to be relocated. Now, that's the benefit of my experience, but Chairman, I feel as though I've actually gone before our harbour master, because I'm sure he's itching to say something, because he'll know. But my view is, if we're going to wait to the 23rd of January to come back to this committee, by the time we toodle off to somewhere else, and we're going to be in the new year, let's set the big challenge. My understanding is it can be done for about 125,000 by a contractor who is based locally. Of course, it needs to go out to procurement. And of course, we haven't even touched upon where the mud is going. But who knows, maybe our friends at the National Trust could be encouraged to take it. But that's something else that needs to be started. But I mean, my view is we should go for the big number, not the small number. Otherwise, Councillor Lagan will be back here every year for the next, every 6 months now. So so that's my view. But I would like to hear from Mr. Harmer.
Mr. Harmer, why not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for the interest shown in this subject. It's a very worthwhile thing, and it actually hasn't been properly discussed for many years. Without doubt, the quay does need dredging, but I do feel that a properly costed project is what's required. I do also feel that some form of initial hit to improve the situation until what I'd call a capital dredge can be undertaken. That's removal of the barges, removal of the visitors pontoon, and all of the mud taken away back down to the chalk base, because believe it or not, the quay is made of chalk under there. And then we carry out a programme year on year of maintenance dredging. That's low key mud washing. I have already had a conversation with Matt Wilson, who is in charge of Northey Island, and the National Trust would be very happy to take as much mud as we can provide them with. They won't pay for it, sadly, but he would be very willing to take that. So we could also use beneficial use as part of our application when going out for a licence, and that would be looked at favourably by the MMO, and would also speed up the whole licence process. I just feel that if as Councillor Lagan's suggesting that a sum of money is put into an account year on year, that might be slightly, with respect, a bit of a hindrance. We need a properly costed project that we can attack, knowing that we've got the money, that we've got the resources, and we're going to do a proper job at the time.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got Councillor Nick Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as we've all said, these are an iconic heritage attraction, and Maldon's blessed with quite a few. But, you know, if you stand next to tourists looking at the fat man of Maldon and wondering why we're celebrating morbid obesity, and other people who are speculating about whether Brisnoff should really be in Maldon or possibly Heybridge, you realise that the barges are the feature of the town that people look at. And unfortunately, it's the only portable historic asset, so they could literally disappear, as Councillor Lagan said, and there are other heritage ports that could take them quite happily. So I am concerned this has taken on the status of a major project, because it's a bit of an indictment of our failure to maintain this asset. And it kind of reminds me of St Peter's Hospital as well in that respect. Perhaps not as bad as that. But we are a heritage harbour. It should be navigable. I really do support the motion with the amendment. I think we have to bite the bullet because, you know, as a film attraction, as a tourist attraction, and the Heritage Harbour itself is gaining in stature and has plans to raise the profile of the town. You know, we have a lot to lose here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stilts, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with what's been said, and I did support this motion. And, you know, we are a recognised heritage harbour. We did get heritage harbour status. We do have a huge tourism around our barges. And this could end up costing us more money if we don't do it, because we could lose those barges, we could lose the tourism. And I will quote from Councillor Pratt, actually, when he said, I wanted to come up to Maldon, but the mud was too much and I couldn't bring my boat up. So, you know, there are other people. The Lord Lieutenant also would love to bring her boat up, but she can't. So we are losing out on tourism because they can't get to us.
Yeah, good point, well made. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with almost everything that's been said so far, but I really do think it should be a properly costed project, and we do need the working group. And because it's unknown, and we can't just write a blank cheque for this, important as it is, we can't just decide now that we're going to go the whole hog, no matter what it is. So I can't support leaving the word principle out, I'm afraid.
Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chair. I can support the removing the word principle. This council has procrastinated over this for far too long, has not maintained an asset that we are responsible for. If we are going to be a heritage, cultural, maritime town, we need to keep that and we need to maintain it. And the fact that we haven't maintained it and it hasn't been maintained in all that time is shocking, really. And we can't afford not to do anything now, and we need to address it. We do have reserves, we do have financial pressure. However, that's what our reserves are for. Our reserves are for things like this. So to me, using 100k, 150k out of our reserves is a worthwhile and viable thing to do.
Councillor Driver.
Well, I would agree with all the comments that have been made so far. I am happy with the term principle disappearing, because I think actually we need to get on with it. I do think we need to understand the costs, so I will be supportive of the recommendations to set up a working party, but time limited. We've got a time here for it to come back, so it needs to work to that time, and it needs to come back then with a costed approach that we can deal with, and we can understand then what that range of costs is. I mean, I was talking to Councillor Lagan, who talks about dredging the entire river. Not seriously, but it is one, it's an option, but it would cost millions. We're not going to do that, but actually we need to understand what it is that we are looking for, so it's clearly defined and there are some clear costs associated with it. I think we have to grab the nettle, and I would just make this final comment. If we don't, then actually the costs are not going to go down. If we come back and have this same discussion next year, well, two things. One, the cost will be even more, and B, we may well find we've got no barges there to actually be looking after because they've gone, or the barges are sitting there unable to move, and the sort of window when they can actually be used for trips and the like might be so narrow because it's got to be on a leap tide, spring tide. Thank you, spring tide, so that they can actually have trips going out. So I think we have to grab the nettle, and I will support this with the principle being removed, would be my view. Thank you.
Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the leader, and we can't just say we're going to do something and never do it. We've got to get on and do it. But I have a couple of questions through you, Chair, to the 151 officer, because obviously at some point the money's got to be spent, and as we're going through the budget process, would this be a capital expense or just a straight general reserve revenue expense? Because we're going to have to, during the budgetary process, presumably allocate some funding for this. Otherwise, we'll get to January, February, March, and we'll find out there's no budget been allocated to it. So I think we need clarification on that matter.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. So I would have to, I can't give you a straightforward answer in terms of whether it be capital revenue. It depends whether it would actually enhance the value of the asset. But in broad terms, it won't make a huge amount of difference whether it is revenue or capital if we're going to have to draw on our reserves to fund this anyway, because our reserves are mainly revenue in nature. So, if we're going to take a sort of one-off hit to fund this as a project from reserves, it wouldn't make a huge difference whether it's badged as capital revenue expenditure. The ongoing implication is obviously as Ms. Green's alluded to, is that we would have to probably make provision within the budget on an annual basis to then maintain that going forward. So that is what would cause an extra additional revenue pressure to be needed to be added to the budget. So that would have to be factored into the MTFS from next year onwards.
Thank you very much. I'm just slightly concerned about a comment that Councillor Fluker made, that there's a chance we might not be able to do this work for a couple of years. Is that, how realistic is that, do you think?
Chairman, I mean, we know the speed at what the MMO work at, and whilst I know, I see Mr. Harper smiling, we know how slow they work. I think even introduce the benefit into this, I'm not even sure if that will speed them up, but we've had both our MPs chasing the MMO and it's never got anywhere. My view is that the officers would be best to explore whether or not it can be done under the same circumstances as the harbour commissioners operate without an MMO licence, because we're keeping the navigation open. It's pushing it a bit, but the alternative really means we're not even allowed to take out a small amount of mud without the licence. And I think in the past we've done that. But I would ask officers to try and find a way around not having the MMO licence, because if it's insisted upon, it is a huge project it will be. And we really want to be able to, for want of a better word, swerve it.
Well, that's something we need the officers to work out, Mr. Harmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in response to Councillor Fluker, I have had a conversation with somebody who already holds an MMO licence that we could almost ride in on without having to apply for our own licence. So that would save us certainly 3 months and several £1,000s.
Okay, so we can work on it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just need to expand that conversation, really.
I think the thought of us not having the barges leaves me feeling cold. But Councillor Fitter.
Yeah, I mean, the harbour, he might be talking about the same thing, because they are doing a project to renovate the salt marshes, where the Wildlife Trust, I think it is, have licence with the MMO to do these things. So it would perhaps kill two birds with one stone, in as much as we would be we would in effect be giving them some funding to help with their project, wouldn't we? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that's perfect for the little two, the recommendation for the working group. I'm just slightly concerned if we take the mud out, are we not going to be able to call ourselves Maldon on the mud? Are we going to have to be Maldon on the chalk?
I think there's probably enough mud around to...
Maldon on the chalk doesn't have the same ring, does it? But anyway, members, I think we've done this one very well, and there's a broad consensus. So we have an amended recommendation to the motion, and that is that the recommendations little 1 on page 11 and little 2 on page 12 are agreed, but the in principle is removed. Councillor Lagan, you want to propose that?
I usually tell everybody else off, don't I?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's my fault.
Oh, yes, and the other is the timescale for the working group. 6 members.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, I propose that we'd remove the officer recommendation is that the committee confirms support to secure safe access to the quay, etc., and the rest of the wording is exactly on there. I think that I've got different figures that's come up under the significant sum of money that we're talking about, but I think Councillor Fluke is 100% correct that we should go for the big number, and appreciate the support, because what you have done by doing that, it's got to be ratified by council. You've kept that going, because that's the key area. You know, it's not my pet project. It's something that is exceptionally important to the town. We know with Mr. Harmer, we got the confidence and the ability, and he's already been very proactive. So thank you, Mr. Harmer, for doing that, because that makes a huge difference. Because there's nerves around that. So with that, I'll close the motion, and I'll leave you to put it to the vote, Chair.
So that is so proposed. Is that seconded? Councillor Driver. Those in favour of that amended, please show.
Chairman, we need the members of the working group.
We'll come to that in a second, but we've... okay, right.
Sorry.
Right.
You're just voting on 1 and 2 then, Chairman?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Which
sorry.
I think we've agreed, yeah? Right, so now we need 6 members of the working group. Councillor Lagan would be sensible. Councillor Driver, Councillor Fitter, Councillor Spenceley. I've mentioned Councillor Driver.
No, I'll do it as well.
Well, I was looking at Councillor Fluker being the font of all knowledge to do with mud and water.
Do we have 6 then?
Never on the fly.
I think it would be useful to have your expertise. So we have. So we have Councillor Siddle, Fitter, Fitter, Spenceley.
I'm not putting my hand up to say yes, but I haven't got
Lagan,
enough knowledge of the water.
and
Not saying no.
Driver. Is that enough?
So, Chairman, I've got Councillors Lagan, Driver, Fittock, Nick Spenceley, Siddle and Fluker, and that would be 6.
Not Councillor Siddle.
No,
Not Councillor Siddle, and that's 5, Chairman.
No, did you mention Councillor Driver?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Sorry, it's
Councillor Thompson, then happy for that.
Councillor Thompson. Okay, that would be 6, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Do
Everybody
you
in
want me to read that back again?
Please, yes.
So I've got Councillor Lagan, Councillor Driver, Councillor Fittock, Councillor Nick Spenceley, Councillor Fluker and Councillor Thompson.
So propose, everybody in agreement? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, okay. The next item is, item 7 is the report in domestic abuse policy. And who is taking this one?
I am, Chair.
Miss Whitley. Yes, hello there. I didn't see you over my right-hand shoulder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Maldon District Council has written a residents' domestic abuse policy in response to the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, which places new responsibilities on local authorities. The objectives of the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 is to promote awareness, protect and support victims, hold perpetrators to account, transform the justice response and improve performance. These new responsibilities can be found in the report this evening, and the policy is under Appendix 1. 1 in 5 adults experience domestic abuse during their lifetime, which is quite a sobering figure. This equates to 1 in 4 women and 1 in roughly 6 to 7 men. Last year, 2.4 million adults were victims of domestic abuse, although it's estimated only 24% of cases are reported. We know not all victims will report their abuse to the police, sometimes due to experience or preconceived ideas of how they will be treated. A third of homeless approaches to Maldon District Council are from applicants seeking alternative housing due to the risk of domestic abuse. Maldon District Council has a responsibility to house victims of domestic abuse, whether this has been reported and/or proven or not. This policy aims to give a clear definition of domestic abuse, promote awareness both internally and externally using all available communication channels, provide a consistent approach to our response no matter where victims disclose abuse, ensuring victim and survivor voices are heard, set out the training and guidance we will provide to our staff and provides extensive information available to support our residents, emphasise our commitment to partnership working. No one agency or professional has a complete picture of the life of an individual or family living with domestic abuse, and therefore strong partnerships are essential to our stand against it, and contribute to adopting a culture that truly reflects a stand against domestic abuse, and to demonstrate that Maldon District Council is a safe place for residents to reach out and seek support. The standalone domestic abuse policy and procedure clearly sets out what residents can expect from us and can hold us accountable to. The policy underpins responses that prioritise the safety of victims and see perpetrators being held accountable for their actions. The policy helps to focus us to ensure that alleged perpetrators of domestic abuse who recognise their behaviour are offered the support to change by referrals to specialist services. The policy accepts victims are victims, whether they choose to report the abuse to the police or not. Victims and survivors must be treated with empathy and support regardless, and the policy sets out how we will do this. The Residents' Domestic Abuse Policy links with our safeguarding policy and community safety functions. It does not replace our safeguarding policy, but should be read in conjunction with it. The policy is an essential tool which sets out the context for the Council's work to protect and support those experiencing domestic abuse. Adoption of the policy also supports the Council's work towards achieving the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance, known as DAHA, accreditation. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone from the housing team present at the meeting this evening, but if you do have any questions regarding the policy that I'm unable to answer this evening, I'm happy to take them away and provide a written response following this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good report. Can I just ask, are we, 2 or 3 hours of my life I'll never get back this afternoon was at the EALC AGM, where the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner was talking about his statistics, as he would, and domestic violence came up as being on a decrease. Are we working with the police? I appreciate this is really in relation to the housing needs caused by domestic violence, but I'm wondering what we do with the police.
It is. We share intel, as I say, with that partnership working, that's really critical to inform that whole picture, because otherwise different organisations have different bits of the picture, but you might not appreciate just how significant the abuse is, or factors might not be known to everybody. So we do work very closely with the police. Police data does show that reported incidents in the district were down between 2022 and 23, in line with the national picture. There's also been a significant reduction in high and medium risk offences taking place, aided by the ongoing efforts of Essex Police to educate perpetrators. So there's a lot of focus on this at the moment. And we have also just brought in a new domestic abuse navigator as well, who started, I think, only a couple of weeks ago. So his name is Ash Garam, so you may come across him with the work that he'll be doing on behalf of Maldon District Council.
Thank you. Excellent work. I think it's important also to say that domestic abuse is not necessarily men against women. It can be the other way around. But this is very important. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad you mentioned the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner, because his annual visit to Maldon District is taking place on the 8th of October, when I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in my ward. Chairman, I think before us is a very sad indictment of where we are with society, but nevertheless it is a very good report, and I propose that members adopt it. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nick Spenceley. Anybody want any comment, or are we just going to agree the two recommendations on page 15? I think that's agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 8 is the budgetary control asset 30th of June 2024, and that's Ms Lucas, if I'm not much mistaken.
Thank you, Chair. So as you said, the purpose of the report is to provide the committee with information in relation to the financial performance for the first quarter of the year up until 30th of June 2024. I just draw attention to a couple of key paragraphs within the report. So at paragraph 4, there's an overview of the current revenue position, which sets out that there's a forecast overall underspend of £414,000. Of which 96k relates to employee costs, 343k relates to non-employee costs, and 25k relates to an underachievement of forecast income. The details of all those variances are explained in further detail throughout the report. I also just draw attention to the capital position at Appendix 1. The capital programme for the year was agreed by Council in February. And in addition, there are some capital commitments that have been brought forward from prior years, as was agreed by the committee in July, as well as the previously agreed UK SPF and Rural England Prosperity Fund capital projects, which are now reflected in the latest 24-25 budgets. The detail again of those is set out at Appendix 1. I'll probably leave it there, and if anyone's got any questions, I'll do my
Well,
best.
Councillor Fluker's light is on, so I'm assuming that you are waiting to speak, Councillor Fluker, so please go ahead.
I left it on. Yeah, look, we often get to this position after 3 months of the municipal year, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that these figures only go up to June and things do change quite dramatically. As far as employees' costs are concerned, I mean, £996,000. Chairman, I was at a meeting today, and I'm sorry you weren't there, but it was clear from what the officers said at that meeting that they do think that they are under-resourced. And I'm just mindful of the fact that we've got quite a big underspend being projected, but officers are saying they're under-sourced, and for example, it's because of that they might not be able to deliver the strategic asset register as quickly as what members might have wanted it, and other projects. So we should be mindful of that. But I was wondering if the 151 officer, bearing in mind we're almost at the end of the quarter, whether or not she's got any flash accounts or any management accounts indicating where we might be at the end of this month, which will be the end of the second quarter.
Ms Lucas.
As you say, we're not quite at the end of quarter 2 yet. I haven't got any reasons to believe the position has changed materially at this point in the year, but obviously that will be reported back to committee in due course. Yeah, I mean, in relation to the employee resources of the council, yeah, as we're considering the budget at the moment, there are requests for additional staffing resources going forward. As you say, if we have underspends at year end which get returned to reserves, there is the opportunity for members to agree to draw down on those to fund fixed term or one-off resources to support particular projects, including potentially some of the asset projects that we mentioned earlier today. The difficulty is obviously agreeing long-term permanent resources for the council, which have to be built into the base budget, and that's more difficult.
Okay. Any other questions, members? So we have recommendations little 1, little 2 on page 35. Thank you very much. That's all in agreement. Thank you very much indeed. Right, the next item is item 9. Supplementary estimates, Virements, Procurement Exemptions, use of reserves, Q1, and Ms Lucas again.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a quarterly report that the committee receives, again, up till the end of 30th of June for the first quarter of this year. And as usual, to report any Virements and supplementary estimates that have been agreed under delegated powers where they're below the level requiring approval by this committee. Also to inform the committee of any procurement exemptions that have been granted during that period. And thirdly, to report on the use of reserves during the period that have been agreed under delegated powers. So if I just draw your attention to paragraph 3.3, it sets out two Virements that are agreed, and these are basically technical in nature to reflect a movement of salary budgets where resources transferred from one area of the organisation to another. To confirm at paragraph 3.4 that there was no supplementary estimates agreed during this period. 3.5 sets out the procurement exemptions, of which there are 3. There's some detail within the report in terms of what those relate to, which I believe is reasonably self-explanatory, but if members have any questions, we'll try and answer them. And then lastly, the use of reserves is set out at paragraph 3.6, again, of which there are 3 which have been approved during this period. Happy to take any questions members may have.
Councillor Fuka's finger wagged there. Is that a question?
Seems to be just me and you, Chairman. I was curious, 3.5.1, item 3, the reinstalled pontoon and refurbished access bridge. Is that in addition to the £110,000 that the pontoon actually cost? I mean, someone wrote in an email the other day that I'm not very smart, but I don't quite understand that.
If I may, Chair.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so that cost is part of the overall project cost that's been reported to members. This is just the procurement exemption, so because it exceeds the procurement limits, an exemption's being granted to award the contract to the existing contractor that delivered the work originally. But it's not an additional cost, it's just the exemption relating to part of the cost which has already been reported to members.
For clarity, Chairman, that's within, off the top of my head, the £110,000 overall project cost for delivering the pontoon.
I'd have to clarify the overall cost because I haven't got that figure immediately to hand, but I'm sure if it's been reported to you separately, then that cost would have been accurate. Thanks.
Councillor Bugler, you're okay.
I'll take that in writing up.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any other members? No, so we have 2 recommendations, basically, that the revenue and capital position is reviewed. So move, seconder. Thank you very much indeed.
Chairman, sorry, the recommendations relate to Virements, procurement exemptions and reserves drawdowns.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's 3 recommendations.
Well, okay. Yes, sorry, little 1, Virements detailed are noted. Little 2, procurement exemptions are noted, and the reserve drawdowns noted. All in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, Tara. You're on the ball, unlike myself. Next item, item 10, discretionary fees and charges policy 2526. Who is taking us through this? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the discretionary fees and charges policies that are proposed for 25-26. It's not the detailed schedule of charges at this stage, which, if these policies are agreed, will be brought back to a future Strategy and Resources meeting for approval. As the report sets out, there's 2 recommendations, which is to approve any changes to the policies, which are summarised at paragraph 3.3. In addition, there's a second recommendation in relation to Appendix 2, which is a technical correction of some of the fees and charges that were set for building control for this financial year, which, again, as I say, I detailed at Appendix 2. Happy to answer any questions members may have.
Councillor Lagan.
Right, get it on. Just the one for the Birmingham Crouch pontoon. What sort of commercial use do we envisage using that asset?
May I refer to
Please.
Ms Green? So is that okay, Chrissy? Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Chair. We don't envisage a huge amount of commercial use, but there is a limited amount of commercial use, and the intention of the policy is, having put the new pontoon in place, if there is commercial use, that will add additional burden onto the use of the pontoon, and therefore potentially increase the rate of maintenance that's going to be needed on it. So the intention is that there is provision there for us to make a charge to help towards the cost of that increased maintenance. But as I say, we're not envisaging, there hasn't historically been large amounts of commercial use, and we don't envisage any significant change to that.
And come back, do you know what sort of things could use it? Boats or
It's cable, yeah.
There's potentially a ferry operator and also an operator who takes visitors to seal watching, I believe.
Councillor Bown.
You're not going to get seal watching back because they're going from Priors, and I think they will stay there. I think the only commercial use would be as you said, the Wallasey Ferry. When it was pontoon before, I think they were allowed to just pull up berth free of charge. We're now suggesting they're going to pay for that. But you're saying that we're not really going through this. So we don't know haven't come to any figures about what we're going to charge for the ferry. Okay.
This is policy only. Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, poor old Councillor Pratt, he must feel the most unwelcome person in the district, because he sailed all the way back from the West Country in his yacht, only to be greeted by a sign that said commercial use only. I mean, a couple of days ago, Chairman, I was in Burnham and there was a fishing boat moored on it. Apparently he'd been there all overnight, and he's quite happy that he's allowed to park there because, I say more, Chairman, for the benefit of the members, because he's a commercial vessel, Chairman, and I think we really need to sort of think this one through, because if no commercial vessels are going to use it, then it's a big missed opportunity. If, for example, we said that visiting yachtsmen could use it for 20 minutes, that would allow them to go ashore, spend a few quid in Burnham, and I think that's a missed opportunity. And the 151 officer must be worried about all these applications on reserves, but I think the plan was that we were going to, once the pontoon was installed, we were going to look at extending the hammerhead so that it would be able to take both ordinary sort of recreational sailing boats and commercial vessels. But Chairman, no wonder the harbour master left this chamber so quickly, because how on earth are the officers going to collect this money? Perhaps one of them would like to explain.
I don't know.
Because commercial vessels, I mean, somebody could be sitting there now and there's a missed opportunity to collect 30 guineas or something. But it's no good coming up with these things. I've heard about the seal boats advertising and running from Priors. The ferry, I'm not sure. I don't suppose the ferry will want to pay anyway. So what have officers got in mind for commercial income, and how they plan to collect the money? I mean, we've got the same position with the visitors' pontoon on the Hythe. I mean, how are we going to collect?
Thank you, Chairman. The intention is to enter into a licence arrangement with the operators that want to have access. So that's the way that we would intend to deal with that. There is a separate issue around enforcement, and that is something that we are currently looking at as to how we're going to deal with that.
Chairman, I'm pleased to hear that, but I'd certainly like something brought back to explain how we are going to police it, because Councillor Bone, I mean, he's a Burnham member, and people are already using this pontoon, regardless of the signs that are on there. And believe me, if a fishing boat comes in there and they don't moor correctly, you've got a £10,000 bill and nobody to send the invoice to. So we need to do something, and quickly.
I think the point is well made, Councillor Fluker. Perhaps we can get South Essex Parking Partnership to take it on as their... So, members, we're not agreeing individual fees and charges. It's just the policies that are listed under little 1 and 2 on page 49. Are we content? All in agreement? No dissent? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, yes, building control. In Appendix 2, has anybody got any questions on that? I doubt it. Are all content? Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. So we now come to exclusion of public and press. Under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act, and this satisfies the public interest test. I so move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. All in agreement? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. So, oh dear, we have another one of these.
Chairman, just bear with me a moment. We just have to make sure the live stream's on.